What it do, low? Yeah. On some murder, kill. Yeah.
He's asking if I was good. I looked the shooter right in his eyes when that trigger got pulled, huh?
Murder music, murder music, murder music, murder music.
Yeah.
Yeah. Murder music, murder music, murder music.
Yeah. Some come through the water, some come.
Andres Mendoza would ask a girl out on a date. And when she rebuffed him, well, let's just say she wasn't left with paying for the dinner. She was the dinner. And some of you thought y'all's dates went bad. At least you didn't end up on a dinner plate. This is the true crime tale of the bones in the basement butcher serial killer. And he just may be one of the most gruesome serial killers I have ever come across. Hello, my name is Holly, and this is the Murder She Shed, the place we discuss the dead, right from this little she shed. And today I hope you have an appetite because we are going to discuss cannibalism. Let me give you a warning. If you think discussions about eating an arm might cause you harm, or talk of eating a thigh might make you cry, then we will wait to discuss eating a head until you exit the she shed. Also, this episode has quite a bit of gore. Don't be snacking. Before we begin, I want to welcome all my subscribers back into the she shed and all the visitors. Welcome for the first time today. No subscribe, do subscribe. I don't care, but either way, just make sure you come and visit us for Rarely Heard True Crime. Each week, by this southern girl right in my she shed may be something you have never heard before, like this case today. I bet you have not heard the complete story on this serial killer. The New York Times last week came out with a news article called A Taste for Cannibalism. It states in the article, it turns out cannibalism has a time and a place. The article goes on to discuss all the shows and books that have come out recently that do discuss cannibalism. It literally has people losing their heads. So I decided for Strange Stories from the She Shed with Simon, it would be a perfect subject to digest. A lot of puns going on there. Simon is my German Shepherd, and he's actually laying behind me. You may not see him, you may not hear him, but I bet you do. There's never an episode where he don't show up sometime during it. This is the story of the most horrific recent serial killer I have heard about in a while. And for some reason, it has not received much coverage. Atizapán is the 7th largest city in the state of Mexico. The landscape around the city is hilly, with lots of trails in which to hike or ride a bike. 34-year-old Reina Gonzalez, a beautiful woman with 2 children, enjoyed living in the city with her husband, Bruno Portello, who was a police officer. Reina owned a small cell phone repair shop. She was proud of her small vendor business. There was a man by the name of Andres Mendoza who would often come to her shop to visit and just to bring her meals that usually was enchiladas or carnitas, and sometimes even bring some for the other vendors around her, and even to the local police. They all know when Andres was younger, he had been a butcher, so they didn't really question him on where he had actually got the meat. But Andres did often let them know it was pork and wild boar that he had butchered himself. Andres, who was 72 years old, would often be drunk, but he seemed like a harmless old man. He was even kind enough to give clothes to just some of the local women that might be in need of them in the town. Some of the women would say he made them slightly uncomfortable because he would often look them up and down. You know, one of those looks. Reina and her husband, Bruno, who was a police officer, felt sorry for Andres and had even invited him to eat dinner with them and have parties at their house. On the morning of May 14, 2021, before leaving for work, Reina told her husband, I have to go with Andres to get some cell phone parts for my business. He is going to help me carry them back to my shop. He told her, fine, I will see you this afternoon, and they kissed goodbye. She dropped the children off at school and then headed over to Andres' house. Andres opened the door and told her he wasn't quite ready to leave, so she should just come on in and wait for a sec. She thought, maybe I should just wait outside, but decided in her head, what harm could a 72-year-old man do? As she stepped inside, Andres plowed a knife into Reina's chest. Several hours later, Bruno, Reina's husband, was worried when Reina hadn't came home. It was very unusual for her to be late. And he drove his police car over to Andres' house since he knew that they were going shopping. Andres stepped out of his front door after Bruno knocked and told him that Reina had never showed up to go shopping that day. Bruno didn't really believe him, but left and hunted down some surveillance videos in the area and then knew for sure Andres was lying. Bruno swung by his brother-in-law's house, or Reina's brother, and asked him if he could go back to Andres' house with him. So after getting to Andres' house, Andre refused to open the door. So Bruno was able to knock it open, but Andres began to fight with him. But due to Andres' age, the scuffle did not last long. Bruno noticed an odd smell of a mix between vinegar and a burnt smell, while Reina's brother stayed back in order to keep Andres from running because he had already attempted to get away once. Bruno began to investigate the house. The house was dirty and filled with just piles of women's clothing and seemed as if he hoarded everything. Bruno decided to call Reina, and her phone did ring, and it sounded as if it came from under the floor of the house. Bruno then noticed what looked like a trap door in the floor of the house. After opening it, he discovered a ladder, and it seemed to make the smell of vinegar almost burn his nostrils. But there was another smell in which he had smelled before as a police officer, and it was the smell of death. He slowly made his way down the old wooden ladder, scared to death of what he might find. As his eyes began to focus in the darkness, he noticed a table in the middle of what seemed like a basement. And on that table was hacked up body parts. As he stepped closer, hanging on a hook above the table was his wife's hair. She had been scalped and her face had been skinned off from her skull. He suddenly felt like he might vomit, so he crawled back out of the basement and called for backup. Reina's brother knew it was bad as soon as he seen Bruno's pale, sweaty face and look of pure shock. After officers showed up, Andres was arrested, and several investigators, as well as Chief Fire Investigator Jonathan Gonzalez, descended into the basement. In the basement, investigators found cooking utensils, books about anatomy, blood-stained knives, pieces of skin, and a plate with a slice of Reina's flesh, omelet, and a tortilla on it. Guys, he was eating breakfast right there with that bloody body laying there. I told you, I hope you're not eating right now. Reina's flesh had been sliced into perfect cuts of meat. Hanging on the hook with her face and scalp was other sections of skin. They even found a Hannibal Lecter type muzzle. He had also been keeping logs of every woman he had killed in the last 30 years. 30 years. That's a long time for a guy not to get caught for all that. Wow. In the blog, their names and addresses, the day, month, and year of each death he carried out, and the weight of each part of the body of his victims were in it. An example of one of his writings was December 17, 1994, 28-year-old woman from this town name, I'm not going to try it. Head, 4.5 kilograms. Livers, pancreas, and heart was 4 kilograms. Ribs and right arm, 14 kilograms. Bust, 1.5 kilograms each. And he even had a sauce made for the human steaks out of peppers and blood. Yummy, are you getting an appetite now? I may not eat dinner tonight after this one, and I for sure won't be eating steak. Probably can't afford it anyway, the price of food right now. Jesus. They found tons of cassette tapes in which he had filmed himself, at times nude, dissecting the corpses. And of course, you probably knew from the start that the pork and wild boar he fed to the locals and police officers was human meat. Those pile of women's clothes were from the bodies of the women he had murdered. He not only gave them away to the women in the city, but wore some himself sometimes. They didn't officially recognize Andres as a serial killer until they started digging in the dirt floor of the basement. They not only dug up as many as 30 women, but also 1 man and 1 child. Up to 5,000 bones were found. There is some gruesome photos online that I didn't put on here because I did not want to get kicked off of YouTube. They were a lot more gruesome than the ones I had picked out. Yeah. Later, Andres would talk to a psychologist and say he cut off some of the women's faces, including Reina's, because they were just so pretty. Oh, God. That is so disturbing on so many levels. I don't even know what to say to that. For once, I am speechless. According to the psychologist, Andres had very little education. Andres was one of the middle children to his 3 other brothers. Andres said his dad was his role model and the one that had taught him so much about politics. Andres had been a political leader in his city before he was arrested. His father was a drunk and beat his sons when he was drunk. His father died when he was only 40 years old. Andres' mother slept around and said to have several children, but I'm unclear if it meant more than the 4 boys she had. Due to the muzzle, the media went crazy, saying Andres had been inspired by Hannibal Lecter. But the psychologist said that he had only watched Mexican movies. He chose his victims that were not fat, but what he described as voluptuous. Mainly, they would be 30-something. Many were single mothers, worked in bars, or were housewives, and he convinced them to just come along and help him with various odd jobs or promises. Many were poor, and he took advantage of that situation. In the evaluation, he told the psychologist that women are cold and calculating like robots, and they always changed him for men who had more money. That was his justification for being a serial killer. But deep down, he not only enjoyed cannibalism, but also necrophilia. The psychologist stated he's seen some of the recordings where he was performing some acts on the video. When he would see a woman he was interested in, he said to himself, I am going to have dinner with this one tonight. He even said at one point he had murdered 2 women weekly beginning in 1991, but later would not admit to saying that. In his journals, he did write down the names of around 50 to 60 women. The psychologist said he was cool, calm, and collected and would look you right in the eye while being cordial and at times just appeared shy. He stated he could see how people could be deceived and lead them to think he was harmless while luring you into your death. Wow, guys, I am pretty sure this serial killer you have not heard much about, and I found him strangely interesting as I researched him. If you were able to have a snack during this episode, then you have a very strong stomach. Wow. Hope you guys have a wonderful week, and thank you for joining me for Wacky World Wednesday. Right in my murder she said, make sure you come back sometime. I love y'all. Bye. Oh, and don't forget my bloopers. Always at the end, or mostly. She was the dinner. And some of you thought, oh God, here she goes again with her rhymes. What's wrong with this woman? I don't know. I seriously don't know, and I don't even know if God has figured that out yet. Before we begin, this episode has a lot of gore. Yes, it does. Lots and lots of gore. Ugh. Don't eat. It's a lot of gore. Or hot. 34-year-old. I cannot speak today. Japan is the second largest city in the state. Seventh. What the? There it goes. Yeah, unplugged my mic. Sorry about that. He's always doing something he shouldn't be doing. I still love you though. Which one of y'all farted? One of y'all farted. Max is in here too, and it's probably Max because he's always the farter. Guys, really? Right in the middle of my video, you got to do that. Really? Holy cow. Max, what did your daddy feed you? That usually was enchiladas or I meant to look that up. Carnitas? Carnitas? Oh no. Eat them before. Always just point on the book. Because I don't know how to pronounce hardly anything. I suck at it. It would be like me having to sing. This voice don't go to singing, and this voice don't go to pronouncing different accent. Did ring. And it sounded epic. It sounded epic. Heck. After opening it. Cooking utensils. Max is itching now. He's breathing in. Their names, addresses. He cut off some of the women's faces, including Reina's. I know you can hear him breathing. Does that just make like a psychotic stalker breathing in your phone? Maybe it adds to my effect. I don't know. You sound like a psychotic stalker. Simon, come on, Max. Come on. What's up? Simon says, this has been a good day. I have four-wheelered and walked and just done a lot of fun things with my mommy. And it's been a great day. And we will see y'all next time. Bye. Love y'all.